Then you start using this NLP, this neuro-linguistic programming.
That's right.
What is that? I mean, for us common people.
For the uninitiated, it's probably best understood as a kind of self-help psychology. It came out of California in the 1970s, which tells you a lot. That context, that time, sort of like westernized Buddhism, Enlightenment, New Age movement, post-hippie. So you had the hippies, and then they were moving into becoming, the hippies became yuppies. So they needed a transitory philosophy, and there were many of them. People became more materialistic. It's created by a guy who's into computing and a guy who was into linguistics. And I think they jacked a lot of the stuff that was like, they're open about it. They took things from Fritz Perls with Gestalt therapy, a ton of Ericksonian hypnosis. They just stole a bunch of concepts from a bunch of people, put them together. It's very American. There was the New Thought movement. Then there's been this thrust, this awkward sort of combination of philosophy, psychology, and American materialism, consumerism together. And it has created these sort of hybrid sort of philosophies, psychologies, and NLP is one of them. That sounds very dismissive. I actually think NLP in its essence is a very, very good tool, but it's so steeped in this cultural baggage that it's hugely associated with smarmy salespeople, manipulation, and narcissistic psychopathy, ironically enough.
When I started reading about it, then I wouldn't say it has a good name to it. I mean, I was surprised, actually, because I had heard the term or seen the abbreviation multiple times, and I've heard about it, but I hadn't really read about it. And then when I started reading about it, I said, okay, this has been given some sort of a bad name, almost like a cult feeling.
Well, because it functions as a cult, unfortunately. And at least one of the founders has grandiose narcissism, at least, probably psychopathy as well. He's a textbook grandiose narcissist. And unfortunately, there is really good stuff in there, but they can't help overstating their claims. Now, if you want to say that you're doing psychology, whether you like it or not, you're saying you're doing science, or at least you're attempting to be scientific. And some of the claims are just absurd. They're totally non-scientific. And when they've been tested in laboratory environments, they've been torn apart because, of course, they would be. They're stupid assertions, not based in any real research or any, anything that would even approach being an acceptable level for a scientific standard. The good elements of it are the frame that it comes from, which is human beings run patterns of behavior. They function like computers, or we should say computers are a representation of the human mind. We run programs. Those programs can be interrupted and we can alter them. That's all fine. The emphasis on hypnotherapy, I think, is good. I think hypnotherapy is a really valid and underused tool because similarly it has a bad name. Not because of anything that hypnotherapists have done. It's the way it's portrayed in the media. So you're always in a fight with a client between their view of what hypnotherapy is and then what it actually is. There are really good elements to it, which is why I still say I use NLP, because I'm not going to lie, I do use NLP. It's a major element of the approach that I have. It's part of my worldview, my gestalt for how I do trauma-based therapeutic work with people.
If I was scared of spiders, how would neuro-linguistic programming be attributed or how to say, used as a tool to help me with that?
It would say, you've learned to be afraid of spiders. It would never look at a genetic component or childhood trauma. It's completely dismissive of trauma, which is one of its major faults, and why, if it doesn't update in the next few years, it could find itself getting cancelled by the SJWs, because the founders and some of the main proponents, especially in the UK, are very, very not careful in dismissing childhood trauma. They even say, if you blame it on childhood trauma, you're doing it to yourself. That's you doing it to you. That's the NLP perspective, which is completely insane and wrong. What NLP would say of a spider phobia would be, you learned how to do this. You're continuing to do it to yourself. So stop. What is it that you're doing? You're running a strategy for phobia. What is a strategy in the simplest language possible? You are playing a certain video inside of your head of what spiders are and what they do. You're creating sensations in your body and you're telling yourself something. So they go through the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. All of this is true. They would then seek to change that video change the audio, and change the kinesthetic feeling associated with the spider via various means. All of this is completely acceptable and does often work. Not always, but frequently does work. Perhaps whatever the video is, we would identify to a nuance what it is. Whatever the audio is, we would identify it to a nuance, to a very specific degree. And whatever the feeling is, we would identify it. And then you start shifting the coordinates. So if the video you're playing is of the spider in black and white and huge and above you, we would make it small and in color and have the spider moving in slow motion over there. If the video has really scary music on it, da-da, here's a spider, we would have it be silly music or funny music or sad music. And we keep changing that with the client until the client says, okay, I feel better. That's it. It's not the full puzzle of human psychology and of mental health issues. If it were, none of us would smoke. None of us would drink. Nobody would have mental health issues because NLP's easily been around long enough to go around the world 15 million times and have cured everyone. It hasn't done that.